started in 1999, and it was one woman's vision to take on climate change at a local level. And she bought this house right here. And we're going to show best practices inside and outside your home. This site flooded, so one of the main things we wanted to think about was water. There is a way a homeowner can affect the flood, and that is by taking all the water that lands on your house, and instead of sending it straight into the storm drains, you send it through a series of water slowing systems. And in the front of our building, we have a rain chain, and our bathtub overflows into what is called a swale. We use it to slowly allow floodwaters to filter it through the ground into the water system. And it serves the purpose of not just flood mitigation and beauty and microclimates, but it also, the people who work for salmon protection here are very happy that we're doing this, because instead of the water going over usually driveways and roads, which will pick up toxicity and oils and different pollutants, it goes through the ground, and the ground filters it the way the ground has always filtered water for us. Just a small amount of our gutters lead to the front bathtub. All of the rest of the roof gutters lead to this 1,000-gallon tank, which we use for some amount of summer irrigation, keeping the pond topped up. It's not, 1,000 gallons, surprisingly, is not anywhere near enough to irrigate a typical backyard landscape. This pond is part of our water reclamation system in the backyard, creating sort of an aquaculture. We certainly have lots of natural creatures. And then this pond actually overflows by large corrugated tubes into this swale here, and then this swale actually overflows into another swale over here. And so this is what allows us to filter all the water and slow all the water down in this part of the garden. So this backyard had been neglected for somewhere around 10 years, but we had the wonderful benefit of mature pomegranate tree, mature lemon tree, mature persimmon tree, mature quince tree. There were already good bones of fruit-bearing trees, which is something that building a community self-reliance includes growing our own food. And we like to encourage people to grow their own food because it's very hard to grow your own food, and it makes us appreciate our local farmers, and it reminds us where our food comes from. There's blueberries, there's strawberries. If you see any berry of any kind, you can eat it. The plants that we chose to plant here serve one of about 4 purposes. Food production, habitat. We're always trying to increase the green belt of Fairfax and make sure that we have the plants that are needed for indigenous species in this area. So we have grasses, which different things sort of like to hide in. We also have native plants, and then we have plants that fit into companion planting or planting guilds in the permaculture world. So they're nitrogen-fixing plants that sort of help fertilize the plants around them, or they shade lower plants. This was a perfectly flat backyard. And so changing up the topography with swales and herb spirals allows us to get a lot more planting space into a small backyard. So we want to increase as much planting area as we can. Because this site was so full and so overgrown, we had a lot of brush. We actually had 2 huge piles up over the fence here of brush from this yard, and a lot of it just broke down naturally as it decomposed, and a lot of it we turned into these brush piles. And it's just brush that's been covered with straw, and it's, as you can see, it's sort of slowly breaking down in there. And we'll continue to add brush, and we'll be able to harvest compost out from underneath it. Actually, what we have growing in these brush piles is potatoes. They're sort of in a dormant state right now. This is one of them that's kind of starting to grow some little potatoes on it. And apparently brush piles are a really good place to plant root vegetables, because then you're not always stabbing them with your spade or pitchfork. You just kind of lift up the brush pile and you get potatoes. And here's a little one. We ate most of them, which is why there aren't any more in here, I don't think. We need to seed the pile again. This is our worm bin. We certainly encourage people to bring their food waste here. Right now about half of it is active. And there's some worms. We basically started this out with a lot of paper and a lot of vegetable waste. This is what we've got, and this has just been like about a month. This is a really good solution for people's food scraps. And food scraps can be a huge amount of home waste. And a lot of people are nervous about having open compost piles at home because they think that the rodents will get them. And so this is a really good rodent-proof solution, and it creates a really, really good compost very quickly without a lot of energy. We're constantly encouraging people to ride their bicycles. When you ask somebody, why don't you ride your bike more? It's like, oh, well, I have heavy things to carry. And so we recycled these feta cheese buckets and sort of attached different hardware to it to make it into a totally fabulous pannier. And you can absolutely perfectly fit a cloth bag of groceries right into here. And I usually have both of mine on here. Our town council is so progressive. They were the first town to do a pesticide ban. They were the first town to sign on for Cities for Climate Protection. And they just recently are in the process right now of working on a really serious plastic ban in town too. It's really wonderful to be part of such a progressive little town that I think can be a really great model for other towns.